Captainmidnight.
Are you a fan of Spider-Man's villains and world, but just can't stand the guy? Do you read Kraven's Last Hunt or watch Spider-Man the Animated Series and think, wow, this is great, too bad this idiot is here to ruin it? Well, then do I have the movies for you? Alright, fine, I'm being a little reductive here. After all, I was the guy who stuck up for the first Venom movie, and Venom is a notable enough character that I think it made sense to believe that he could carry his own films. But starting with Morbius, and continuing now with Kraven and Madam Web, it's not looking great, in my opinion. That's why I want to talk about the past, and especially future, of these live-action Sony Spider-Man spin-offs. Oh, and if you're a fan of the webhead, why not look into my comic book Binary Sea? We have this Amazing Fantasy 15 variant cover that I'm really proud of. And if you just want to read a good pirate sci-fi adventure story, digital editions are only $2 for a 32-page issue. Plus, you can read it right when the campaign wraps up, so please check out that link down below.
You are about to embark on a period of training.
The only thing I'm embarking on is a trip out of here.
Alright, so the Madam Web trailer dropped recently, and it was mostly baffling. As someone with very fond memories of early 2000s Spider-Man comics, it was pretty nuts to see a live-action version of Ezekiel Sims. Sure, he was briefly used as the spider therapist in Across the Spider-Verse, but this looks to be an actual fleshed-out adaptation of him and some of the stranger elements of those comics, which most media featuring Spider-Verse stuff has been more than happy to ignore. But I'm also not trying to say it's going to be a faithful adaptation, because that doesn't seem to be the case either. The Madam Web trailer is very strange to me because it's at once indebted to some of the most mystical and polarizing stories in Spider-Man history, and painfully generic looking. I don't want to be too harsh on a trailer, and hopefully the movie turns out to be great, but it would not surprise me at all if the movie releases and all this Spider-Man lore stuff feels stapled on, and a more straightforward story of a woman who gains the ability to see the future right before it happens would have been preferable. Again, I'd love to be proven wrong here, but I just have a hard time seeing this movie pull off Ezekiel and the spider totems and everything that comes with that very well. Then there's Madam Web herself, who of course bears very little resemblance to her original comic book counterpart or the fairly faithful version I first encountered in the 90s animated show. They even tweaked the name a bit from Cassandra to Cassie Webb. Honestly, I always thought the Webb last name was really goofy, but then a guy with that name actually directed Spider-Man movies, so I don't know, what do I know? Anyway, this version is not blind, elderly, or paralyzed, which, seem like pretty defining characteristics of Madam Web. I'm guessing it's supposed to be leading into some of those things happening at the end of the movie, since this is set in the 2000s, and I'm assuming meant to eventually connect to either the Venom or MCU Holland stuff. This also appears to be setting up a whole new cast of characters that I'm sure Sony would like to have their own movies. Most prominently, Sydney Sweeney as Julia Carpenter, who we briefly see in her Spider-Woman costume. Julia Carpenter can be a really great character in the comics, but I'm also doubtful that any of this will really end up happening. And I do hope that these characters have a compelling reason to be in this movie, beyond just setting up future projects that Sony would like you to be excited about. But again, I'm not really holding my breath. There's also the rumor that Adam Scott, who we see in the trailer, will be playing a young Uncle Ben. I want to pause here and tell everyone to just watch Party Down, a show starring Adam Scott. It's the best, and he's great in it. But anyway, Emma Roberts may be playing Mary Parker, Peter's mom, but those casting rumors are really based on nothing more than what's listed on IMDb. I wouldn't be surprised to see them go this direction though, with the movie just directly ripping off The Terminator and seeing Dakota Johnson and company trying to save Peter Parker before he's born. I really hope that's not the case. Not that it wouldn't be easy to ignore in the grand scheme of things, but in general, I think one of the biggest appeals of Peter Parker is that he's a pretty average guy. Once you start adding Eternal Spider Destiny and turning him into John Connor, you'd miss a lot of what makes him special. Still, this does seem like what one of these movies would do in a desperate attempt to tie themselves more closely to the actual Spider-Man films. Speaking of, there's a rumor going around that the fourth Tom Holland movie is going to go into the multiverse stuff again and really dive headfirst into tying into the rest of these Sony films. This hasn't been confirmed, and I'm a little skeptical, but just as a concept, I really do not like it. The ending of No Way Home sets up a perfect opportunity to do a more grounded Spider-Man movie, and though I enjoyed No Way Home, I really don't want to get to the place where the only Spider-Man stories these films can tell is about the multiverse. Now, I think this works really well for the Spider-Verse films, because it really helps give those movies their own identity, and gives them a lot to work with visually. But I don't think the gimmick of every Spider-Man movie should be that there's just tons of Spider-Man. I'd love for the fourth movie to have a story to tell about the character that doesn't involve tying into a bunch of other stuff. I think there's still plenty of great stories to tell about Peter Parker just struggling under the burden of being Spider-Man, especially with where No Way Home left him. At the end of the day, that sense of responsibility is the core of the character, and I'm afraid that all these endless bells and whistles that have been attached to this premise over the years will prevent the series from ever getting back to that, especially if what they're giving that up for is so that it can tie into Madam Web, Venom, Morbius, and Kraven. I keep forgetting that Kraven the Hunter is still coming out. It was already going to be weird, but I feel like now that the PS5 game has exposed the character to such a wider audience, it's going to feel even stranger now, because this Kraven bears such little resemblance to that. The movie, at least from the trailers, seems to be less burdened with tying into everything else at least, so maybe there's a chance that it can just be a respectably entertaining film in its own right. But after Venom Let There Be Carnage and Morbius, I don't really have a reason to give these films the benefit of the doubt. Right now seems like pretty bad timing for the studio to fully jump into the live-action, mildly Spider-Man related universe. A movie like Morbius was truly offering nothing to viewers beyond, hey, you like Marvel movies, right? This is a Marvel movie, if you squint. And with the MCU and DC faltering so much in the past year, I just don't think that's going to be enough anymore. Venom at least has some major star power to pull people in. That's not really something you can say for Kraven or Madam Web. I think they need to seriously reconsider making a lot of these movies, but if they absolutely insist on giving like Stegron the Dinosaur Man a movie, at least do it in a way that feels distinct and unexpected. That's what Into the Spider-Verse pulled off so well, looking and feeling nothing like an MCU movie. I don't think these live-action films are accomplishing that. Like, maybe there's a 2000s goofiness to them that's kind of fun, but it isn't accompanied by much of anything else. Like, there's zero of that sense of style that Spider-Man 2 or 3 had in a movie like Morbius. They've all been pretty blandly shot and composed. This Madam Web trailer honestly looks like a straight-to-streaming movie, and unless that movie is The Other Side of the Winds, that's generally not a great sign. In the end, I can't say I'm excited about where this is going. Nothing I've seen from Kraven or Madam Web interests me very much. I really don't want Holland's Spider-Man to have to tie into this stuff, and I hope they decide on a radically different direction soon. With Sony doing so well by Spider-Man in the animated and video game realms, I don't think there's a reason their live-action counterparts have to be this half-baked. Whatever plans they have, I really think it's time to rethink them. Anyway, before you go, I'll ask again that you check out my new sci-fi adventure comic, Binary Seed. We added a new tier so you can get the book and your name in the back of the physical copies of issue 1. And again, the first issue is completely finished, so if you get that $2 digital edition, you will be able to read it right when the campaign ends. I really want this to be available at whatever price you can afford. Just getting it out there to readers is what matters most to me. The whole team has really been thrilled by the response so far, and we can't wait to get it into your hands.
Here's a special tip for the fellows and girls.
The regulation of His Majesty's Royal Navy. Article 1. None shall presume to quarrel with or strike his superior officer. The pain of such punishment shall be that the captain...
To have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.